Hello friends, welcome to NEET Tracker. So I would like to ask you all what's in a name? The topic for today's lecture is the living world. So what is life? When we are talking about the living world, we need to know what is life. I'm not asking about जीवन क्या है. I know that it's चलता फिरता एक खिलौना, दो आंखों में एक से हंसना एक से रोना है. I'm also not talking about this philosophical thoughts. But seriously, what is life? When you talk about something living, how do you describe that this particular subject, whether it is a plant or an animal or an organism, is living? So it must fit into certain criteria. It should be able to grow, it should be able to reproduce or procreate, it should metabolize, and it should respond to certain stimulus, whether they may be internal or external environmental. So, there are a diverse number of living organisms known to the mankind at present. The number ranges from 1.7 to 1.8 million. To put it into perspective, you can count the number of zeros. So, this vast number of living organisms, diverse from each other, are also known as biodiversity. When we talk about this much number of organisms, it is obvious that they are all different or varying from one another. So these varying organisms need to be identified. That is why we need to tell Shakespeare that there is so much to a name. I mean, Kevin was different from Stuart, Stuart was different from Bob. In general, you know all of them as minions, but they were also different from one another. And to call some particular person, we need to name him or her. I'm not being feminist here, non feminist, I mean. So, this concept of nomenclature was introduced by Carolus Linnaeus. He gave the binomial nomenclature system, which is every particular organism is given two names, the generic name and the specific name. And this name for that particular living organism is similar all over the world. I mean, you call a potato in the US or in the UK, but it is alu in Hindi, it is bateka in Gujarati, it is something else in some another language. So there is no standardization for that particular living organism. So when the scientists need to communicate to each other, they need a particular standard name for each living organism all over the world, and the drawbacks or limitations in the communication was overcome by the binomial nomenclature system introduced by Carolus Linnaeus, again a Swedish botanist. There are international organizations, the ICBN and the ICZN, International Committee for Botanical Nomenclature, International Committee for Zoological Nomenclature, which regulate the naming of the living organisms. So, when we talk about Mangifera indica, we are not talking about this orange colored indica. We are talking about this thing, this delicious king of fruit, the Mangifera indica. Here, the first name, Mangifera, indicates its genus, and the second name indicates its species. Also, sometimes the name of the author will be added as a suffix. Here, we can see that the naming is done in italics. For example, this is a question from NCERT textbook. Identify the correctly written name. So in first one, we can see that Mangifera is always capital. I mean, the generic name starts with a capital letter. The specific name will start with a small letter. So the first option is wrong. The second one is correct. Next comes taxonomy. Taxa or taxon is nothing but a category. The process of classification of living organisms based on their characteristics is called taxonomy. So to understand taxonomy hierarchy, you need to be a crorepati? No, you don't need KBC for taxonomy. You need KDC of taxonomy, which is KDC of genus species to memorize. So it is nothing but kingdom, domain, or phyla, class, order, family, genus, and species. The details about the same will be more understood while studying the plant kingdom or the animal kingdom. Here, in general, we can see the taxonomic ranking system. The domain is the basic domain. There are three basic domains: eukaryotes and prokaryotes. Then comes the kingdom. It may be Animalia or Plantae. Phylum Chordata, non-chordata, class Mammalia, vertebrata. There are several others: order, family, genus, and species. So this is the taxonomic ranking system, the hierarchy, it can be said. So each step, when we step down a pyramid, we can see that the base is above and the apex is at the bottom, indicating that the classification becomes more and more specific as we progress downwards, and it becomes more and more inclusive going from bottom to top. And also there are certain taxonomic aids where students and curious biologists can uh, feed their brain. So the herbarium consists of dried pressed plant specimens which are preserved on sheets. Also they are arranged specifically so that a person interested in botany can study them. There are botanical gardens. It has collection of living plant species grown for purpose of identification. Museums, there are collection of preserved plants and animal specimens. You can see various types of insects. I have seen museums where they have preserved dinosaur eggs as well. So a museum is a great place for collections. You can also classify various organisms. Zoological parks where wild animals are kept in protected environments. And keys. Keys is something where the identification is based on contrasting characteristics. The contrasting traits are in a pair, usually called couplets. We'll see with an example. For example, you want to classify a certain animal, you will see where it fits in this key. I tell you that you have to classify this vertebrate. You will ask whether it is having fur or it is not having fur. If it is having fur, it may be a mammal. If it is not having fur, we'll ask another question, whether it has feathers or it does not have feathers. You say yes, it has feathers, then it is a bird. You say no, it does not have feather. You ask another question, whether it has dry skin or moist skin. If it has a dry skin, it may be a reptile. If it has moist skin, it may be a fish or an amphibian, depending on whether it has scales or not. So, friends, this is the basic chapter, the introductory chapter in your biology textbook for class 11 when you are beginning to prepare for insert in general and NEET. To be more specific, if you are studying or aspiring to become a doctor. So don't forget to skip your lessons. You please remember that all the chapters are important, and we'll see you in the next lesson. Goodbye.